So today, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Bridgen from OneTrust. He's the Global Offering Manager. OneTrust are leading providers of privacy, security, and governance solutions. And today's a bit of a special one. We're going to be talking about secure work anywhere. So as things are changing from remote working, the tier systems are changing constantly. How do we secure how we work wherever we're working, whether it's at home, in the office? So Scott, over to you.
Lovely job. Thanks ever so much. So this is an interesting one. Everyone calls it the new normal, and it is beginning to kind of feel that way, to be honest with you. It's an interesting point because, look, we've worked in very traditional corporate security and the traditional network environments, and things have been difficult as always because the advent of data and privacy, and then the focus on security, and more importantly, just a good governance. That's always been there, right? However, new stuff's been thrown into the mix. Back in March, we were all forced to effectively just work from home, those of us that had the luxury to be able to do so. And the problem that we've got is that it's not just about securing working from anywhere as working from home. It's kind of about secure work anywhere, because some organizations are going to close their offices because actually they've realized that they can operate and function properly in the kind of very non-traditional way of being completely spread out. I mean, don't get me wrong, again, a lot of organizations are very used to their transient employees. However, there's some considerations that, unfortunately, in speaking with customers and what they tell us, that they're not seeing, or they're blind spots. And it's not about the technical aspect. It's not about the things that you expect it to be. It's around the people part of the problem, because we can break it down into three areas, right? We can break it down into people, process, and technology, the world of risk management. Now, technology is relatively controllable and it's a bit more predictable. We can monitor it. It can be automated. We've got maybe a bit of AI and stuff that you can chuck into the mix, but we're not quite in Skynet territory just yet. So we've pretty much got a handle on that. However, it's fallible and people can find gaps and holes. And more importantly, employees can find ways around it. We've got the process piece, so the governance aspect of how we document, measure, monitor evidence, and make sure that we can remediate and do all the good stuff off the back of it. We could also use that as actual policy to enforce and make sure people are educated. But it's the people part. And then we come to the last aspect, the people part of the problem. Now, this is the thing that I feel like a lot of organizations might not have got a grip on. Because yes, you can secure the castle. Now, we operate in kind of two worlds. We have the very traditional moat and castle, which I think a lot of people have operated in traditionally, where you have your perimeter, you have your kind of police force, you have your archers on the battlements kind of thing. They look inwards, they look outwards, but everyone pretty much in the castle is trusted. However, the zero trust approach, where that's where we kind of go, well, we've still got all of those defenses, but I don't trust everyone in my castle, and I'm going to basically challenge them to basically evidence to say who they are and give them access to what they need and make sure that's kind of properly tracked. And we're seeing a lot of organizations do that. The problem we have is that as a process is great, and actually I think it's a really, really smart move, full stop. But there has to be a balance, and that balance is between user experience and our security posture. And the problem is we focused on the security posture because that's kind of what we have to do. It covers a lot of our governance and some of the legal requirements and privacy and security and all the other good stuff. But the people part of the problem and the user experience, if we don't get it right, then there's a revolution within our castle. And it's not a revolution that's so overt where people are holding placards and they're standing at the sides throwing potatoes and tomatoes at us. Quite the opposite. It's more kind of subterfuge that goes on. Now, this isn't a malicious act by any means. It's not like, typical world of security. We talk about threat actors and that kind of stuff. It's your basic unaware employee. However, your basic unaware employee is kind of leveled up a little bit. Like if anyone's played Mario, you're going along, you hit a brick, and then all of a sudden you've got that mushroom and Mario's twice the size. That's kind of what's happened with the unaware employee, because they've hit that brick several times and they're pretty big now because they're not just an unaware employee. They're an unaware employee that's distracted. They're an unaware employee that's fatigued. They're overworking. They're trying to show that they're working hard because they don't want to get furloughed or made redundant. And their teams are smaller, tight deadlines are tighter because medium and long-term goals have been shortened to more tactical short-term goals. and they're dealing with uncertainty. It's not just what's happening in the workplace. Look at what's going on in the world. Do you know what I mean? It's 2020 has thrown so much stuff at us. All we need now is zombie apocalypse, asteroid strike, and we're pretty much, that's bingo complete from that perspective. And so what we have to do is take into account our audience, because actually working from home for an employee is harder than working in the office. Now, people are sitting there probably going, what? It's not, it's great. Well, actually, it's not. It's not great because there's a couple of things. Number one is we have to try harder when we're working from home. Right now, I've got a little dog, literally as we've been talking, popped his head up and he wanted some attention. And that is a minor distraction, but that minor distraction is also a window to look out of. It's a fridge that I can go and see if any new food has magically appeared. And what it becomes is one of those things that builds on time. And you've got your pre-COVID employee who was difficult enough to talk about security with because they didn't really care about it. They thought security was password, capital exclamation mark and then a set of numbers. There's a fantastic Michael, what's his name? Thing he does about passwords, and it's so accurate for like 99% of people. So you've got that employee that was really predictable and unfortunately exceptionally fallible, and you were trying to communicate security to them. But now you've got the employee that's got what's going on around them in the world, plus the fact that they're working from home. And so what we're seeing is organizations pivoting, right? They're changing the way that they operate, and they're changing the way they operate. And you could break it down into kind of like 5 key areas: device security, governance, data location, communication tools, and awareness training. And so basically it's as simple as devices, right? What are we giving our people access to, what they should and shouldn't have? More importantly, do we all have the capability to track what's crept in from a shadow perspective onto our corporate network? Are people chucking their mobile phones and all the other stuff on there? And are they trying to access applications that traditionally they would access through their laptop or other devices we've given them? Have we authorized this? Can we monitor this? And also, can we prevent data leakage in the event of something going wrong? Processes, have we tested to destruction, right? Test. It's just a simple thing. Configuration standards to reflect the new environments, test to destruction. Internal pen test, external. Now's the best time, to get a really good, pen tester to come in and really try and find those gaps and holes. That's a good thing from that perspective, because the more they find, the better prepared you're going to be, because your employees are as clever. They're not as technically clever, but Jeff Goldblum once said, life finds a way in Jurassic Park. And that has stuck with me, because employees are that clever from that perspective. They will find a way. And technology, has it all been configured up to the latest, configurations, patches, all that kind of good stuff? Then we look at the governance piece. And again, people, process, technology. People, do we allow them to print at home? Printing at home, it's a big bugbear of mine. Why do people actually need to? Have we checked to see if it's necessary for their role? Because if it's not, then they shouldn't be allowed and it should be disabled. But if it is, that process should be tracked. We should be tracking who and how and what they need to print. And that should be explained either by line management or whatever, because if they don't and they throw that in the bin, and dumpster diving, which is becoming back into fashion, and it's not just, your typical paparazzi doing it to find out what celebs are doing. They're doing it to find sensitive and confidential information. And we've had already experiences of this. In France, it happened. Big hacking group went along, did some dumpster diving in a very affluent area, found some really sensitive information because people just chucked it in the bin. The process side of things: write a policy, update the policy, communicate the policy, get people to understand it, measure it, and then monitor that from that perspective on the technology side of things. Data location, look at your vendors. Where's your data going? It's not just about their resiliency, because, okay, everyone's done that already, but it's looking at actually the data that you're exchanging with them. Have they had to change their extended enterprise? Is data where you're expecting it to be? Are data exchanges safe and secure? It's not just about privacy, it's obviously the security aspect. Are we sharing the right data? Where is that being shared? When we're changing the processes, have we looked at our employees and what data we're giving them access to? Based on their location, are we allowed? So, and have we received the right authorization from Pan-European Works Council, for example, and all the other difficulties that we tend to come across? So again, it's not just security, there's the people part. The process piece, have we looked at it? Have we got the right controls in place? Have we identified them? Have we refined them? Have we done control reviews? And then technology, looking at your assets. Communication stuff, it's training, but it's not boring learning management because no one does it, right? Everyone will race through it. They'll skip to the end if they can. They'll do 20 attempts at the test just so they can get through it because that's human nature. And if I'm working from home and I'm trying to do other stuff, make it interesting, make it exciting. Practical demonstrations of compromised devices. I sat in on one of our customers actually wanted to show us what they were doing. And it was so cool. They got they got an iPad and a Chromebook, I think it was. And they showed how easy it was to basically hijack it, do some different things, because basically the employee had put some, standard business applications on there, but how easy it was, because obviously the home device is like 60% more likely to have malware on it. Mm-hmm. And that can then bleed in. So again, and then lastly, it's about that really making sure that the training is completed versus understood. So you measure that people do understand it. You get the right frequency, the right channels, and more importantly, you've got the right triggers in place to ensure that training is initiated. That's pretty much my 10 minutes, I reckon.
Yeah, some really great analogies there. How do you see different industries? What would be your top tips for different organizations in different industries for considering the whole people process technology that you've mentioned?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting one because depending on the different industries are going to have different drivers, and basically organizations should have by now pivoted and reflected on what their short, medium and long-term goals are. And actually, as cyber and and IT risk professionals, which the two are very different, by the way. Cyber is obviously the more day-to-day, protecting kind of stuff and making sure that we can respond and detect, and we've got the good intelligence aspect and we can do the prediction. And then the IT risk is more about the enterprise and actually working out the impact and being able to translate that. And during that translation conversation, we should understand what the company's goals are. And the shift from the that medium and long term down to the short term tactical, keep the lights on, operate, deliver widgets, customer satisfaction. Actually, what we can do as organizations is make sure that we know where we stand. So what are the things that are important to our business? From a compliance standpoint, what's the mandatory? We've got to do the mandatory. So what's our part to play in that mandatory? Protecting data, securing it, blah, blah, blah. So it's prioritization, but unfortunately, it's not just, it's prioritization for your industry. I think that's the thing, but also against your organizational goals.
Fantastic. I think you've made some really good points there. So Scott, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers. Stop.
Thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to keep following us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube for the daily video updates.